On this episode, I visit with Tim Mattek. Hey everybody, I'm Tarek Merchant, and this is the IMRecruitable show. I'm here with good friend Tim Mattek. Thanks for joining me.
Sure, so nice to be here, Tarek.
Awesome. No, thank you for hosting me at your place here in Boca at the headquarters of Complete Performance CP by Tim Mattek. I remember when we met a few years ago through Coach David Getz from UPenn. He told me, you know, you're somebody I definitely should meet because in my line of business, helping kids with the recruiting process, it all starts with the development of the game and making sure that you're a competitive tennis player and that you can go through those junior years and get to the point where you need to be once you hit me and my company, and then you know sky's the limit. At that point, more and more opportunities will come your way. The better player you are, the better student you are, the better person you are, right? And so I wanted to spend a few minutes at first for those people who don't know who you are. You know, you're obviously Bethany Mattek Sands' father, and she's had an unbelievable career so far, winning, you know, Grand Slams in doubles, mixed doubles, gold medalist at the Olympics recently, but also suffered a serious injury last year, which was really, really sad for everyone to see, including myself, who've been following you guys and knowing you even on a personal level. But wow, how she ever come back. And then to watch you with your program, when we met, we were very similar positions. We both had, you know, we're doing our companies and we were doing well, but we were, you know, kind of trying to take it to the next level. And we both sort of, you know, done that through a lot of hard work. So I wanted everyone to get to know you a little bit better, a little couple-minute background. Let's start with that.
Yeah, that sounds great, and I really like what you're doing. I just want to say that first.
Thanks, Tim.
And there's a lot of, a lot of synergy here because, like you said, you know, it's really, really important to get the facts, get the information, set up your profile, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on here.
Sure.
But getting back to my background is that I actually have a financial background. So when I got out of college, you know, I studied, you know, I had a finance major, accounting major. I went and became a CPA, a CFP, certified state advisor. I was just all that route. And
so nothing to do with sports.
Well, I played sports, but
what did you play?
I played basketball. I played football. I played actually tennis. I was actually number one in my high school. I went out for 2 years. I was number one in my high school.
No way.
But yeah, but the thing about it, I have to kind of qualify that because it was the first year that we started tennis.
Okay.
And I think there was only 2 people that went out. No, there's more.
One of 2.
Anyway, it was. But I played tennis in the recreational area. You know, and I actually won a lot of trophies actually.
Sure.
And then played in tennis. But I focused more in high school in football and also in basketball, and then I went on and played basketball in college. So I have a sports background.
Okay, and where did you play college at?
I played in Minneapolis. Okay. Yeah, I played at a private school, actually an NAIA school, Augsburg College, and had a really nice run there, you know, in basketball. And then also got my degrees. And the nice thing about it, so I kind of knew the scholarship route because I was actually enrolled by about 200 colleges and universities in basketball. And
big time sport.
And so I had to go through all that. Of course, I was always really reactive, not proactive, because I really didn't know what the process was, and it was, but it was really good preparation for me for later on, you know, with my 4 kids. You know, Beth is the oldest of 4, so I have 2 girls, 2 boys, and some went the college route, some decided not to go to college route. And Bethy, of course, didn't go to college route. We were considering it, but then some things changed, you know, and we went into that pro route pretty earlier.
Well, I don't want to stop you on that, but I'm going to because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you that I've never even asked you outside of something on a show is that what was the deciding factor between sending Bethany to college versus saying, okay, let's do the pro route?
Yeah, well, you know, Bethany really liked school, really, and we kept her in school. I don't even believe we ever homeschooled her. We might have pulled her out for a time. We tried to make some adjustments in school, obviously, because, you know, her tennis schedule. But when it got to that point where we had to make what I call an early decision. You know, we had to really make an early decision on whether to go the college route or whether to go the pro route. Well, because interestingly is that her improvement just skyrocketed between that ages 11 and 14.
Okay.
And I'll get to that maybe.
Sure.
We can get on that later. But she really accelerated her improvement. and she represented the United States and went to Europe to play at that prestigious La Petite tournament in Tarbes, France, and went ahead and became actually the only player in the history of that tournament, which is very prestigious, and won both singles and doubles.
Right.
And so and that was as of age 13. So now you're looking at, she's not only one of the better players in the United States, she's actually one of the better junior players in the world.
Right.
That created a lot of interest, obviously. But I have to tell you the story, is that right after that, she went into some tournaments. She had some really nice results in some tournaments, and I got this letter from a coach who, at one of the Ivy League schools, and he had, and I didn't realize this at the time.
Yeah.
So we get this letter, and I'm going, oh, they're interested in Bethany, that's awesome. They had seen her play, et cetera, et cetera. And it turned out at one of these tournaments, Bethany had defeated one of their players. And he really was interested in wanting Bethany to consider, that school. And so I had to respond to the letter, just thank him. I was really honored that, he was considering Bethany to, save a slot for the, on the team, at that particular school. It was a really nice school. I had mentioned to him, though, that she was 13 years old in eighth grade.
Okay, wow. So she was getting that much traction from that early on.
Yeah. So, and again, it was just accelerated improvement, and that's
maybe he thought he was older too, or she was older because
I don't think
we didn't have.
I just don't know. I mean, I think it was more on the skill level. You have an eighth grader beating someone that was on his team in a tournament, and I think maybe he just didn't put two and two together.
Yeah.
And I don't think they followed it quite the same back then as they did.
Right. They didn't have the technology and the all the sites now that tell you where you're at, like how old you are and what you're doing.
Well, I never heard back. I never heard back from the coach. Okay, because. A few months subsequent to that, she was doing, again, she was continually accelerating her improvement, really on a really good course. And then we had some interest from some of the management companies. So now instead of the colleges, we're starting to get some letters from management companies, from agents and things like that. And then we met just a wonderful man, the late Mark McCormick, who had founded IMG. And he was one of the ones that took a real good interest in her, as well as his wife, Betsy McCormick. And we just started a relationship with them. And she ended up, instead of going the college route, she went ahead and signed with IMG.
But I guess what everyone needs to understand is your daughter was one of the best in the world and one of the best in the United States from not only a young age, but continued to do that. And so had she had not been, it would have probably been a different route, right?
Oh, for sure. Because I had other kids that went the route and got the college scholarships. It just wasn't in tennis.
Right,
Even though they played tennis early on.
Yeah.
A lot of this process, it doesn't apply just to tennis. It applies to almost every other sport.
Exactly. I'm always telling families about that, your sport is a component and you can evaluate level and there's, certain slots where you fit in and types of schools, as you know.
Absolutely.
But that's for every sport, and then the rest is the same. The academics need to match the school and the coach's requirements. You've got to make the visits and all those rules. Pretty much are the same. There are some slight communication rules, but as a whole, you're doing the same process and you're taking the same rationality, right? Like between going the pro route, the college route, and understanding how difficult that pro route is, right?
Yeah.
Like I guess people don't understand how good you need to be, right?
Yeah,
and
not only how good you need to be, but really, and things are really changing. And so that's one thing I really want to tell your audience is that things are really changing, even in the junior level.
Yeah.
Because on the pro level, you're actually having players playing longer and playing at higher levels at an older age. And that's never been done before.
That's right.
So what does that mean if you just bring that back to the junior level? What does that mean? That means there's less slots available on the pro level.
So true.
Yeah, so there's less slots available, but there's still a lot of slots available in the college level.
That's right.
Getting those scholarships, aren't there?
And there's more opportunity to mature and grow and still make it to the next level,
and that's
right?
the next point I'm going to make is that now that some of these pro players are actually playing, peaking in their 30s, for example, they're pretty mature.
Yeah.
Okay, way more than before when you had all these teenagers coming in here and then making it, especially on the girls' side, but even on the guys' side, these teenagers making a dent as they went into the pro ranks. That's not happening as much anymore because you have to like grow up.
Yeah.
You have to have some maturity. You got to start developing some character. What's really interesting is, as I was recently with one of the families that hired me with one of the players that's on our program at the girls' hardcourt 18s, I started getting around a lot of these coaches and talking to these coaches, and they were talking about how important that character training is as well. Not just the play on the court, because they're going to be part of a team and they're going to represent that university, and they're going to be an ambassador for that university.
Totally.
And
That's what the coaches want and the schools want from you for for 99.9% of these kids, even the ones that go on to pro, is that you represent your school well and that you're an ambassador and an alumni, and then eventually other kids will want to follow in your footsteps, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so what we're doing is we're putting a high priority on the character training, on developing that player as a person.
Okay.
And because there's really a lot of power in that person that actually comes out in the court in those competitions, especially under pressure.
That's right.
So,
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how you made the transition from the financial world then into what you do now, and how that all came about. I know you've told me about that, and I want everyone else to know that cool story that you have.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because it's a journey. This tennis development, it's a marathon, and so many people get wrapped up in those players, for example, that are on a sprint. But it's a marathon, so you got to be more strategic.
Okay.
And so what I started realizing early on is I wasn't getting the improvement that I wanted to see, especially in competitions with Bethany, with her the effort that we were putting in. And on top of that, she was just one child out of 4. My wife would be here, I would be there. One kid would be at this location, another one.
Juggling a lot of.
And so we're challenging that, and also we have a limited budget. So we didn't have an unlimited budget that we could go ahead and hire people and do all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, I was thinking, I got to make this more efficient. There has to be a way. And thankfully, I got around some experts, that actually talked to me about how it can maybe accelerate that improvement and kind of sort of get your bang for your buck. And it was crazy. And that's when I started this journey with Bethany. And we started doing these things with Bethany and doing a lot more mental training.
Okay.
Okay, so a lot more off-court training. There's this concept called mental progression. And mental progression is actually a learning technique on how you can actually accelerate improvement. So it gets the athlete to not only learn the information faster, but also to retain it and then execute it. And so I started really digging into that, especially with Bethany. And that's where, remember I was talking about how she had this great improvement from age 11 to age 14 or age 15?
Yep.
This is when we started implementing this. And I'm just telling you, it was crazy. Even the coaches couldn't believe it. The coaches were sitting there going, how in the world? It's like we would tell her what to do and she would do it. Instead of we would have to keep reminding her what to do.
Right.
What a big difference, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that. I'm talking to a parent now. Imagine your son or daughter always having to be reminded to bend their knees. Or even to inhale in the backswing.
Right.
I mean, how much you got to pay a coach to learn how to do that? But the fact of the matter is they're not doing it.
So are you talking about, because I'm relating this right now to a situation I had with one of my main former coach where I had the mass improvement from sort of 12 to 15, and my tennis game improved drastically. He was more about teaching me how I can teach myself or understand myself what I need to do, rather than always, him just telling me what to do.
Yeah,
and that's what it is, right?
And the thing about it is that's wonderful that you had somebody like that.
Yeah,
okay?
I think I was lucky to get that, right?
Because what happens a lot is that these athletes, these players, are always relying on somebody to show them or tell them, instead of them developing the awareness of being able to make the adjustments they need to make.
Yeah.
And that's where mental training comes in. That's where this off-court training comes in, because we empower these players to actually have a situational awareness that they didn't have before. And so they can actually, based upon this mental progression learning techniques that we use, they're actually able to make real-time adjustments in matches, no matter what the situation is, because they're actually able to have the awareness of it in the first place. Instead of worrying about things that are usually blowing them out or getting them to just have negative self-talk, negative body language, and everything goes south from there.
When did you start to realize that everything that you were doing and all the stuff that you've learned can turn into a blueprint for success, not only because you were proving it with Bethany, but then you can make a business out of it too?
Yeah, well, I wasn't really always trying to make a business out of it. It's like I can just kind of almost quote, this is sort of a family operation, and I have my two boys.
Which I love,
my two boys, Chad and Andrew, and they're saying, Dad, they said, we have an obligation to get this information out. We actually have an obligation to people to get this information out. And we really truly feel that way. So, and the thing about it is that if we were getting this information, if someone was working with us personally, it'd be too expensive. and we can only work with so many people at a time.
That's right.
But now because we transferred this to online, and they have their master schedules, their short schedules, they have these tools that they can actually download to their devices. They can be listening to a powerful mental training tool on the way to their match, on the way to practice. And we actually have some of our high-level players that are getting ready for, say, a gold ball. You know, they're in a final of a national tournament listening to a mental training tool on the way to that match. I mean, you go, what the heck's going on? Well, the thing about it is that it activates that muscle memory so that they can actually do some mental execution and actually execute what it is they learned. That's what's so crazy. They actually can execute what they learned. It doesn't matter the situation because they can rely on this training. Instead of all of a sudden, it's like, I can't do that. They go negative because that's how they've been trained, because whenever they're reminded of what they're not doing, how many times are they reminded that they gotta move their feet?
Yeah.
Well, pretty soon, if you remind them enough time that they're not moving their feet, they might start thinking they really can't move their feet. Because really, that's how the brain works.
Right, right.
You know, that's why a lot of these these top fighters, you know, they hire, what is it, what's the fighter,
Mayweather?
Mayweather, sorry, Mayweather. You know, he hires people right around him that just say good things about him.
Yeah.
He's not gonna hire people to say bad things about him. He's not hiring people to say, listen, you really need to, that left hook, it's just kind of like, you need to really adjust that, it sucks. He'd fire him, because you can't do that at that level, because he's trying to make $150 million for one fight. So he's not, you know what I mean? That's at the high level, so why don't we start doing that at the lower level, and we call that table talk and court talk.
Okay.
And that determines the self-talk. So,
okay.
And it's the self-talk is what's going to determine whether or not they're going to go to high levels in those moments.
Yeah.
And it's all determined about what's going on in the court with that court talk. Are they being criticized, or are they being affirmed? Back at the table talk, which is at the home mostly. You know, what's going on at the home. Are you proud of your son or daughter? I mean, they're actually really working hard to become to play in a national event. You got to actually be working pretty hard to get to that level.
Oh yeah. And
you got to start being proud of that. You know, as a parent, sometimes we're always looking, oh, they got to win because of that college scholarship. They got to win.
Too much pressure being put on.
All of a sudden, it becomes not a game. Isn't tennis a game? Did you learn that tennis was a game?
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, as soon as we go ahead and say, well, you got to go and get this, it now doesn't become a game anymore. Yeah.
No, I can relate to that. People ask me a lot of the time, like, you know, how are your parents? As we know, a lot of times parents can put a lot of pressure, or a lot of athletes put a lot of pressure, especially in today's world, about the scholarships, about the pros. You know, there's a lot of expectations. My parents never did. They always encouraged me, in fact. Yeah. And I felt like, you know, my mom always encouraged me, which was always motivating. And I was naturally motivated. Yeah. And my dad was always there to be rational about things. Like almost like, you know, you got to do this, and if you work hard, good things will happen, but if you don't, you can't be upset. You know, all those things that you can reason with, and so I was as good as I could be based on the situation that I was in, and of course I can learn a lot, like we all have, right? But like, I feel like that creates a happy environment, like you're saying, and I never felt that someone was chasing a point or something so I could get my scholarship or something. I never felt that pressure.
Or a win.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like, you know, you already know as an athlete what you got to do. You already know when you're getting to that age that certain tournaments are important, that certain matches are important, that getting to a certain ranking or rating is important to get to the certain types of colleges or to the pro level, whatever it is, to get to a certain level. We already know that.
Exactly.
You know?
But if someone can understand, I think this is a really, really important concept is, this is the goal, but this is what I can control.
Right.
I can't control the goal. I can only, in fact, when I get to the goal, I should just be really fired up that I got, you know, of all the things that I did. Yeah. And what most people think of all those things that they have to do as being a pain, instead of embracing that as just, that's the opportunity for growth. Yeah. It's what you have to do to get to the goal is where the victory is. Yeah. And so because we work with a lot of athletes now that are going and getting scholarships. You know, they're going after scholarships. But how wonderful it is that they can go ahead and start understanding, and even not just the player, but also that environment around, that they can change the talk, they can change the table talk, and start encouraging more, and start realizing that they're a team, working as a team. And I'll tell you, you can't give, when you're going after a high goal, like getting, say, a D1 scholarship, that's a high goal. Yeah. And to go after that goal, you got to be just like, you got to be a cheerleader. That player needs cheerleaders. That doesn't need criticism. all the time.
Yeah,
you know?
more
And-
pressure.
yeah, they got to be cheerleaders, and you got to have the patience. You have to have patience.
One thing I absolutely love about your program is the blueprint that you have, the progression that you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this earlier. Is that, you know, you have to have sort of, like you said, goals that you try to hit, short term, long term, and then you have a method to the madness, right? To say, like, you know,
you have a plan.
You have a plan, exactly. And so, like, you know, I find it mind-boggling sometimes when families decide to, you know, put their players, for example, in a tournament that's well above their caliber and do it multiple times over and over, only to try to bypass, let's say, another system or ranking that's out there, instead of just owning the level that you can play at.
Yeah.
You sort of, you know, owning it, achieving good results in it, and then of course, if you get those results, you're able to move up the next level.
Yeah.
Tennis, for example, allows you to bypass at times based on some of the tournaments, you know, the way they're sanctioned or regulated and who can enter and who cannot. But, you know, I would never do that, you know, to myself, and I think that it negatively impacts the growth. And so, you know, in my business, I'm always like, okay, you're coming, you want a college scholarship.
Yeah.
These are the things we need to do academically, athletically. This is my evaluation, and this is what you can achieve if you do this, and if not, more doors will open, and we have a game plan.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about the blueprint. So I'd love for you to go into how that blueprint works and how that player then, especially for my audience, who comes to me at grade 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, wants to play at these certain schools, but have you put in the work ahead of time? Have you tried your best to get to the best level you can be?
Well, are you on a good plan? You know, are you on a good plan? So you have the goal,
Yeah.
and it's a great goal, but you're not the only player that has that goal.
Right.
Right? There's
Right.
competition.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody wants to be number one,
Yeah.
right?
Or-
But only one guy can be, or one girl can be number
Yeah,
one.
how many people want to go to Harvard? How many people want to go to UPenn?
That's
how many
right.
people want to go to Stanford? You know,
That's
how many
right.
people want to go to Georgia or Vanderbilt and things like that?
Yeah.
You know, Illinois, you know, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing about it, the nice thing about it is there's a lot of colleges, really good colleges and universities out there
That's right.
that are waiting for your $100 to play for, so they can do a number of different things. But let's just get back to a little bit about that tournament strategy that you said.
Sure.
Is that when we work with our players that, you know, work personally with our CP team, is that we talk about the rule of third. And so you really want to use tournaments, or how you're doing in tournaments, as really a gauge for where you are in, development-wise. Okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you have to go ahead and insert, say, a more strategic offensive slice, for example, backhand slice, you want to be a little bit more offense instead of the loopy stuff where you put your track shoes on and you're done.
Yeah.
Or you're just doing it because you're in trouble or whatever, but you want to get a little more offense on it. Just say you have to put that in there. You're not going to go against players that are way above your level of your development level and work on that, developing that skill, are you?
Right. Or be successful on it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you're probably going to. Well, if most of these teenagers are going to just say, heck, I'm just not good at it. If I got to keep getting pounded on it, so you want to just spread out kind of what their competition is. That's why it's okay to play lower level tournaments. It's okay to play a 6 or a 7 or even a 5 or a 4.
Yeah.
Because those are things where you work on stuff.
That's
okay?
right.
So we kind of just rule third. A third of your players should be at a higher level than you, a higher level of development.
Yeah.
A third should be around your area, and a third could be where you have a little bit higher skill level. than
Makes
your opponent.
sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And that way you can do a lot of different things. You're more balanced in your approach on development. Now, the closer you get to making the decisions and working in your program, because now they're getting to be maybe freshmen, sophomore, juniors. Instead, you're getting into that junior level or
Yep.
sophomore, junior level, is that you may have to change this goal a little bit. But the nice thing about our program is that we actually have this program called Tennis Blueprint. It's actually 5 levels,
Yep.
and each level is 8 weeks. You have an 8-week plan 5 times progressively, so it's a 40-week program. But at the end of that 40-week program, your improvement, it's just crazy. It's crazy what your improvement will be. And I got to tell you, this plan, you want to integrate it with your on-court work. So this is a lot of off-court work, okay?
Yeah.
A lot of mental training. And it's mental training in actually 3 different areas. A lot of people think this is really crazy because the number one concern that we get, in fact, in order to be accepted, for us to, people apply to get into this online academy. And so they have to fill out this application. Then we have a meeting with them and we talk to them, okay? And we don't say yes very often. That's the whole thing, because they're just not ready for it, or because it's comprehensive.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's not so much that it costs money. It's just that because we believe it costs me a lot more money to get this thing developed than anybody's ever going to pay for it. In fact, it's pretty cheap. And we actually let players do it in installments. Parents pay for it in installments.
Yeah.
Because it's a 40-week program. It's almost 1 year. And most of these players repeat it, actually. And they'll use a lot of this aspect of this information all the way through their college career. And we even have pros that are utilizing a lot of aspects of this plan. But the thing about it is that they have to fill out this application, and we take a look at this application. Just say you only have another year to go or whatever.
Yep.
Well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to just worry about it, or are you going to actually get a plan that actually is in place that's proven to go ahead and meet your goal? And the thing about it is that number one problem is that these players, these parents, or whether the player's talking or the parents are talking, is they wish that their players could give their best performances in competition and not leave their best performances in practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
isn't that the challenge?
Yeah. Well, no, it's a challenge. So the thing about it then is, what do you do about it? It's a concern, and the thing about it is that nobody really can get their head around what mental training is. Because here's the question we ask on the interview, or when I'm talking to them.
Yeah.
Well, how much time does your player spend on the court? Or I ask the player, how much time you spend on the court? So they give you their schedule and what they're doing Monday through Saturday or Sunday or whatever. And just say it's 18 hours. I said, okay, well, how much time are you devoting to mental training of that total training time? And they go, 0. So, well, then why would you be surprised that you're blowing up in these pressure situations? Really?
Yeah, it's the rational way of thinking, but
well then I say, well, why can't you do a few more hours of mental training? Here's what their answer is. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to do it.
Right.
I don't know how to do it. And they're not going to hire a sports psychiatrist. They're just not going to do that. Because that might take a long time, because you really got to, there's other ways you can do it. You can do that, but that's not what they're going to do most cases. So what are you going to do? Well, first of all, what we do, let's define mental training. So we define mental training, and we simplify it. We put it into 3 categories. So the first one is player development.
Okay.
The second component is personal development. And the third component is performance development. So we're developing the players, and that's skills, strategies, tactics, okay? And the best way that we found to advance somebody on the mental side in player development is to go ahead and have them follow that learning technique, mental progression. And the thing about it is that what these players are doing is they're hitting these ceilings of these walls, and they're getting frustrated, they're losing motivation, and they're missing 3 vital steps. And here's the steps they're missing. The step number 1 they're missing is visualization. They haven't developed their visualization skills. That's step number 2.
Give me an example of each if you can.
Okay, I will. So the second vital step is muscle memory activation.
Okay.
People are thinking, well, what the heck is muscle memory activation? That's right. That's what you need to be doing. So you can activate the stuff you have in your brain so that you can start activating it actively so it actually can execute. And that's the third vital step, which is the most important, what everybody's looking for, and that's mental execution. That's taking everything you're doing off the court, whether it's in the gym or whether it's in the practice, and bringing it onto the match court under pressure and being able to execute. And that's what everybody's looking for. But nobody can do it consistently. Nobody. They can't do it consistently. But a lot of our players that are on our program, because we're dealing with this realm of player development, and we're doing all 3 of these vital steps. So let's go to that vital step number 1, visualization.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, most players aren't doing it. But if you're good, tennis is a complex sport. I don't care what anybody wants to cut, how you want to cut this, slice that pie. I played a lot of different sports, and tennis is a complex sport because there's a lot of stuff going on with all the technique, right?
Yeah.
And you got the footwork, and you got to make decisions. There's tactics, there's strategies, and then you got all the different components, the distractions, whether it's weather or whether.
You're on your own.
And you're on your own. Yeah.
You're not just playing a role like in other sports.
No
I mean,
teammate.
Your own teammates.
You're playing doubles, which is another cool thing that I would tell everybody to be playing.
Absolutely.
In the juniors is play doubles.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be actually a bigger sport in the pros. It's getting to be a bigger sport. In the U.S. Open, just in the mixed doubles final that my daughter was in, is the biggest. In fact, Judy Murray, Andy Murray's mother, came to me and said it was the biggest doubles crowd she's ever seen.
Yeah, I remember you sent me the video, and there was a ton of people there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
There's so many people, and they were into it. It was just like, I'm a little biased too, but they were actually for my daughter's team. So
Sure.
they were for Jamie Murray, and they were for Bethany.
And Bethany, yeah.
So anyway, but visualization, if you're going to learn or improve anything in this sport, it's got to be done through that mind first. You got to see it first.
Okay.
So you got to develop that. You got to develop that visualization skills. But even if you're doing visualization, it may not be effective, and here's why. In order for visualization to be effective, is that it has to be specific, and what you're visualizing has to be correct. Because you do not want to be imagining the wrong things at all, okay? Because that's what's going to stick. That's what's going into your muscle memory. And so I was really, really sensitive to this with Bethany. Even if we were watching a match, and just say the technique was just lousy, I said, Bethany, don't even watch this. Because I just didn't want her, because I knew what was happening in the brain.
Right, right.
Okay, so she'd go, okay. So we wouldn't watch it, okay? But what we have is we have mental training tools in our blueprint, and we also have 2 other programs that are prelim kind of to that blueprint. They're 12-week programs, and the blueprint's a 40-week program, but they all have that mental progression, those techniques. And so how do we help our athletes improve their visualization skills and develop those? Well, we have 2 tools. We have what we call a visual cue tool, mental training tool, and that's where they're actually watching a 10-minute video, whether it's on the forehand, say, or the backhand, and it's going based on a cue system. And so, for example, and I tell this to a lot of our athletes, ones that come here and work with us at our headquarters here, is I'll actually, we would take Federer, for example. He would be, in fact, I just did this about 6 months ago. It was just on TV. They just played one of his shots, and I decided, since they did it in slow motion, I decided to record it, and then I sliced it up into like 12 freeze-frame pictures, continuous. And I would say, on these 18 cues, these 18 important things to do, let's see what Roger's doing on his backswing. Let's see what he's doing when he's getting ready to accelerate the racket, when he's transferring weight. Let's see what he's doing when he's following through and he's coming over and extending over his body. And so they would list down all those 18 things he's doing. And that was just one random shot. And the difference about Roger and someone else is he's doing that 99% of every one of his shots.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And we got these juniors saying, I'm only doing 3 things 50% of the time. Or I'm doing 8 things 10% of the time. I'm doing the other, 5 things 5% of the time. It's because they're getting so many incorrect reps, then it can't possibly, how are you going to fix it? That's why in traditional tennis development, it's all about fixing problems. Well, with the players that we're working with, we're not fixing problems. We're actually developing to add on and do other things because they're not, for example, they're always inhaling on their backswing. Always. Well, how do you do that? Well, because it's part of the cues, and they watch this video for 10 minutes. In fact, this is what we get from parents after we have even kids as young as 8 and 9 and 10 doing this. This is what the parents would say. I can't believe that my son is doing it right almost all the time now. So he would watch a video, and he would go ahead and he would execute it on court. But that doesn't mean it's still in yet. Though.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah. But it
helps, and it's actually a faster way, and that's what we started doing with Bethany. So that's one of our tools. We have another tool called audio cue. So this is actually, instead of watching a video with these certain things that they're reinforcing those cues, they're now listening to an audio track with their headphones on for 10 minutes, and now visualizing it, and because we're engaging them on a step-by-step basis, we're engaging that most powerful part of that human being, and that's the mind, brain, and we're getting them to now visualize it and use their imagination. So powerful. So we have players that are actually on these tools on the way to a high-level national tournament, listening to a 10-minute video or 10-minute audio track on their headphones, just relax, okay? And then we forget about it, but we know now it's in them, right? Okay, so that's visualization. Now, how do we activate it? How do we do muscle memory activation? Well, once you have these cues in, and they listen to these tools, we now have them doing what a lot of people call shadowing drills, shadowing exercises. You've done those, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the thing about shadowing drills is that if it's not done correctly, if it's not done, if it's not specific, and if it's not in a controlled environment, they're not as effective. In addition, you want to add, and what we do in the blueprint is we add footwork protocols so that they're now doing the right footwork, the footwork movements while they're practicing the cues, doing their echo drills. So we call them echo drills, and we have 54 echo drills that we do progressively in the blueprint.
Yeah. No, I think that's like, there's always things that everybody does, and certain coaches will tell you whether it's shadow or, certain footwork drills, but like, the interesting part is that there is certain things you need to do. There's a certain process. There's things that these professionals are doing, right? That is a reason why they've got to that level. Of course, there's talent. Of course, there's that mental side and that little bit of the it factor and all that. But how do you get the most out of your game, right? And that's what I'm getting out of everything that we've always discussed and what you're telling the viewers today is for me, it's after being a college tennis player and being in the industry, coaching a little bit, spending almost 10 years now in the recruiting game, I see, and time with coaches and our camps, everything that, I've been around is just so much more and more clear that what you talk about and the fact that, we can't learn it all, right? So like, people are hiring our company for the expertise that we have. People are hiring your company for the expertise you have, and that if you have somebody with a certain strategy and a method, I mean, you assess it, and that's the best part. Like, you've had success, which is great, and you're so proud of it, and you're doing it for all the right reasons, and that's the thing. If someone was to come to you, and after 6 months or something, you show them what happened, and if nothing happened, I mean, obviously something's not going right. Yeah. But if you do, it's just easier for things to go right when you actually have a plan. Well, and too many kids are hitting tennis balls. And that bothers me because when they come to me, for example, can you imagine, like, I did my business because I had such a great experience, because I had the time of my life, and where I am today is all because of sports, and I know that is the same for you and Bethany and all your kids.
Such a great vehicle
for
them to grow up.
And so it's almost painful to see other kids come through the ranks and suddenly they want to go here or there, and they weren't prepared from the beginning, and it's almost too late at that point. Of course, you can always make the best of your situation, and whatever cards were dealt to you, you got to deal with. But there's ways to make it better, and so I love the concept of what you're doing there.
Well, let me just say this too: is that you're going to have more opportunities if your preparation is correct.
Absolutely.
So think about that. It's the preparation. But let me just say this about with the coaches is that really these coaches, they have a tough job.
Because you work with coaches, right?
And the coaches, we're now getting coaches that are really understanding that our program is actually working off court, getting them better prepared so that they can actually coach better and do all those great training that they want to do with their kids, instead of having to remind them or criticize them on this or whatever. No matter if the criticism is constructive, they mean well, but it still has an effect, and usually it's negative on the player.
Building a team, I feel, is so important.
Well, a lot of coaches here, especially in South Florida, they're starting to realize, hey, if I can get this team, or like your team, just think about it, so we're just part of the team, because it's going to take a team now. Because coaches can't know everything, so they have a really difficult job.
They do.
They're actually doing so much, and a lot of them are doing a great job with that.
They are.
They're doing so much in such little time that the expectation is so high, and it's so hard for them to meet that expectation. Yeah. So I just want to say this to the coaches: hey, help's on the way. Help's on the way.
It's a good way to.
Help's on the way, guys.
It's the way I've always approached it.
I'm not even kidding you. We have coaches right now. I have one coming down. There's a coach coming down from Canada that's actually one of the top coaches in Canada. Yeah. Another coach down here wants me to meet him so that they can start doing some of this off-court program up there, because it just makes the coach's job so much easier. They leverage it. And when those coaches get on board and say, oh, you mean that, I can do this drill now. Like, for example, in your mental training, if they're listening to a forehand, if they're focused for 2 weeks, for example, on forehand, for example, it'd be nice to let the coach know that in the mental training, that cue system, that in the brain, they're really activating that forehand really heavy. You might want to just go 70-30 to the forehand side in that training on the court, and you'd be surprised what's going to happen on the leverage. Just knowing that one thing is huge, and just allows that everybody to work better together. Yeah. So we have our players saying to the coach, hey, coach, I'm working more on my mental training right now. I'm focusing a little bit more on my forehand. Okay, great. Now we can just go ahead and tailor those drills to really work on that forehand and let that come out. See, what you're trying to do to get the high level performances is you're trying to get that training to come out on court in real time, right? Yeah. Yeah. So what's blocking it? That's the thing. What's blocking it? And everybody has to answer that question. Am I a part of that blockage, or am I going to let that training free flow out? Because I tell you, a lot of these kids are a lot sharper than we think they are. They're sharp. They're smart. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I'm being simplistic a little bit on some of this. Sure. But it's really real that everybody can work together a little bit more and be a little bit more team-oriented to get the best experience. Because at the end of the day, we got parents that are forking out some pretty good money. I know, exactly. And that's the saddest part, probably, when a family comes and says, I've spent all this money and didn't get what I wanted. Yeah. It's different
to know that, you know, everybody's got their different, points of success, you know, that not everybody, like we talked about, is going to be the best player in the world or in the country or, in your state or your city, whatever. But you want to get the most out of your best bang for your buck. Like you said, you know, you put in this time and money into it. You've invested a lot, and so there should be something good that comes out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. and that just led me as to part of our program. We also add this one component, and it's for parents, and it's practical solutions for parents. And so we have this online masterclass just tailored for parents, just to give them a little bit more knowledge on where they are in the process. So I think they're going to lighten up a little bit more. In fact, that's what we find is that coaches are going, hey, the energy level coming from the parents is down a little bit. The kid's starting to feel that the energy level's down because the parents starting to get a little bit better idea how this process really works and really how much time it takes and what has to be done in the process. And all of a sudden they just go, hey, I'm just going to lay back here a little bit. Now I know this, and maybe it's a little bit easier coming from me because I went through everything. You know, I went from cradle to gold medal. You know, I was on the whole process.
Unbelievable.
I quit my jobs to do this, you know. I wasn't an accountant anymore.
No, I mean, I think that's why you've had so much success. I have a lot of respect for you. I love having these conversations. I think we're going to get you on another time in the future, but I want to thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
And, for all the viewers out there, I mean, as you just said, even you've done everything from the cradle to a gold medal to Grand Slam champion. I mean, you've lived it, you've studied it, you continue to work in it. So I think it's to everybody's advantage to seek, advice from people like you at the very least, if not, seeing what your programs offer, working like, as you say, as a team, which I believe in tremendously. I'm always about a team effort. I think everybody's specialized in their categories, and people need to work with that so they get the most out of their time and their money.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So